Welcome, everybody. This is Jerry Mathis, field agronomist in South Dakota. Joining me today again is Dale Victoria from Southeast Minnesota. Going to give you another update. We've got our planting season pretty much in towards the tail end of it. There's still a little bit of beans and corn in, and definitely some replant situations going on here and there. So, Dale, one of the big questions that's coming up is what's next? What's next on your agenda that you're going to go out to that field and recommend to guys to take a look at?
Yeah. So for me, Jerry, the biggest thing that is next to do on this corn crop that is planted is really evaluating how well our weed control is. So for a lot of guys, it's looking at how well did your pre-emerge hold? Are we starting to run out now? And then also there's others that maybe you didn't have a pre-emerge out there on that crop. So now it's coming saying, all right, when do we go in next and we start taking control of this? Now that we've had enough moisture, we've got heat coming, that is really going to explode some of these weeds. And so that's my next call to action, is to really evaluate where we need to go next and how soon we need to get back out there and control those weeds. So that's kind of the first thing. And then the other thing is we're out there looking at this crop, and we're kind of scouting, looking at our weeds. We're looking at our stand. We're looking at the general health of this crop. So the thing I want to look at is how about nutrient needs and how we're setting on these fields. For a lot of us, we think about the three big nutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. And, right now, the year we've had adequate moisture. We're not really seeing any K deficiency issues out there because we have had enough water. On the phosphorus side, we haven't been extremely cool. We haven't seen a lot of that purpling. Okay. But now we are starting to see some of that yellow flash, just due to that physiological change within that corn plant, where it's passing the baton off from the seed to those nodal roots. So we're going to start seeing that. So my big thing is weed control, but then also how about nutrient needs for this crop? So Jerry, what's your thoughts on the nutrient needs and what's our next step there?
Well, one of the biggest things I look at is you have some guys that put all of their nitrogen on up front, which is fine. We've had a little bit more water this year, so you could have a little bit of leaching and some of that denitrification. However, those guys that are actually going to go out there and do another pass of split applying your nitrogen, I really like that opportunity, because in a drier year out here, I don't have to put as much on if it looks like I'm going to be dry. However, if I have the opportunity, because I have moisture, I have that chance to push that nutrient need and add a little more nitrogen on. And that's kind of where I'm seeing things right now. Still don't know exactly where June and July are going to come into play, and that's typically what we have happen. But we are getting a good base of water in the soil profile. So depending on where a guy's at, so if you're normally say 120 to 180 pounds of nitrogen, somewhere in that range, I might tell you to, you might increase it 10% if you're comfortable with that, depending on where the yield potential is on that field. So when we start looking at that, can we do it just off of that? We can do it partly off of that. Another thing, Dale, is you're in an area where you typically do get a little more rain. You typically have some very good organic matter. What's some of the things that you look at, or how do you assess some of that, and what would you tell a guy to do?
Yeah. So, like you said, that is pretty normal. Within southern Minnesota, we usually do get adequate rain. Last year, not as much, right? But what I always look at is we look at what is your base rate of nitrogen, how much do you have there, and what is your plan for the next step. The big thing with the organic matters we have within Minnesota, usually we're on that higher spectrum, right? In most cases, we're anywhere from that, 3 to 8%, depending on where you're at. So I look at it saying, okay, those areas, we have the capability of mineralizing a lot of nitrogen, especially if we have the balance. And I always like to talk about the balance as 2. All right. Just like how you spell the number 2, TWO. That's the balance of temperature, water, and oxygen. Okay. If we have a balance of those three, we can mineralize really well. So in a lot of cases, we start thinking about a 3 to 4% organic matter farm, just on average. In a lot of cases, we can get about 20 pounds of nitrogen out of each percent of organic matter. Now, it's all dependent on that balance of temperature, oxygen, and water, and as well as your soil health. So for a lot of guys, we've had some of these conversations saying, hey, we've been wet. So how much do you think I lost in some of these areas? And that's kind of it's a wild number, and it's kind of a guess. We don't know really how much we lost. However, in a lot of these areas where we may have denitrified more, we may have leached some more, they're also the areas that have probably some of our higher organic matters. So we have the potential of overcoming that and bridging that, as long as we had a decent enough base down and enough wiggle room there to get us through these early stages by the time we put that feed bag on that corn plant, V8, right? And if we dry out a little bit, we have enough oxygen and water within that solution in that soil. We can bridge that a lot. So that's my 2 cents on some of these higher organic matter fields. We probably still have enough there, Jerry. Okay, so that's, and every situation's different, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay, I'm in full agreement with you. I've seen a lot of cases in the past where we've been on the dry side, adding more nitrogen did not increase yield. Now, there's been a lot of different biological stuff that's been used, and we've talked about that on this as well. And this could be a year where we actually see those working about to the max ability. So some of these guys that have put that on or put it in furrow, this might be the opportunity where, am I going to worry about it? I might not. I might not spend the extra money. And if I had plans on putting another 20, 30 gallon of something on side dress, I might just leave it at that. We do have some water there, but like I said, we're not through June and July as of yet. And like you said, with the 3%, I'm in agreement with that wholeheartedly, because I've seen at the end of the year, there's times we're down to a half a pound of nitrogen per bushel efficiency. And there's other times we're closer to 1.2. And where we're at with soil health, with the residue breakdown, and the whole nitrogen thing that way will make a big difference on where we're at. So some of these newer hybrids, where some of them do take up nitrogen a little bit on the later side, if we have our biology working, they will convert that to organic nitrogen, and that's going to be available for that plant a little bit on the later side, so we can actually pull more in at that pollination time frame when we're having a huge draw on that soil for that plant to pull it in. And typically, if you look at that time frame, that is when, if we're going to see a leaf yellowing, it's going to be that top leaf starting to turn a little bit on the yellow side. And so we kind of got to make sure that we're where we need to be, where we want to be before then. And so that's the management considerations we're looking at now. V2 to V3 a lot of times, or V3 to V4. How much more nitrogen do we need, and what is the plan? What has been the plan? Let's stick with the plan. I don't think we've had so much water in some areas anyway out here that I would change it a whole lot. Some of it might be delayed a little bit, just getting back into the field after we've had some of these rains. Anything more to add on that, Dale?
I think just the one other thing that I'd like to add is, when we're talking about nitrogen management, the sulfur aspect, right? We've been talking about that the last multiple years, sulfur needs on corn. And there's a saying, and I'm gonna call it out here. The other agronomist we have within Minnesota is Mike Blaine, and he's always got this saying that I like. His saying is, sulfur is the orifice that regulates nitrogen. So what that means is if we have our balance right between our sulfur and nitrogen, just like we've been talking about a lot of things, is the balancing act. having the correct amount of sulfur out there will help us become more efficient as well on nitrogen. And on the flip side, we think about sulfur, we can mineralize and get sulfur out of our soil as well, just to what we were talking about before when we have that balance of temperature, water, and oxygen. So that's the other thing I just want to bring up is that sulfur aspect too, Jerry. So
okay, there's a lot of guys doing that, and there's some different ratios I've heard out there. The old one that I used to go by was always around 5-1. Something like that is where you kind of wanted to end up roughly. But yeah, it's another mineral there that definitely helps out with that nitrogen uptake and works in the soil that way. And you do definitely get it to break down or released from organic matter as well. So, well, with that, Dale, hopefully if we can continue getting some timely rains and get into the field and do this, it looks like we're setting up for a very good crop here. So I'm looking forward to that. And with that, we'll kind of say that that's it, and we'll work on another couple of weeks here and see what the next management strategy is going to be that we're going to be looking at. With that, thank you very much, and we'll talk to everybody else later. And if there's other further questions, please give Dale or myself or another Beck's representative a call.